to another interview with Coolnet 560. Here we have Don Carson. He was a senior art director for there.com. And next to Don, we have Virtual Vicky, as we all know, Francis Seven. At this time, he can't talk as well as he is recording the interview. Would you like to say hello, Don?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming. And first, I'd like to say thank you so much for taking time and doing this interview. I know you have a busy schedule, and it's really great to that you were able to come in and talk to us about there and everything. And we are also very thankful for you taking the time and developing your textures for there and everything that you've done for it as well.
It's my complete pleasure. Thanks.
Okay, so my first question is, Don, would you like to tell me about yourself?
You bet. Let's see. I originally started out as an illustration major in the early 80s and pretty much graduated about the same time the illustration stopped being an industry you could make any money at. And I eventually landed as a show designer for Walt Disney Imagineering, working on designs for theme park attractions, which I did into the mid-90s. My background as an illustrator allowed me to do drawings, and my interest in theater and theme parks allowed me to turn those drawings into concepts that would then be turned into architecture and handed over to architects and engineers. In the mid-90s, when the color home computers came out, I went and bought a color screen Mac, and it was the first one I had bought that had a CD-ROM drive in it. And I asked the salesperson if they had a CD-ROM that would show off, my fabulous new machine, and he handed me the game Myst, which I got home and I put it right into the computer and was blown away by the fact that all the skills that I had been developing as a designer for theme park attractions were actually being used to create virtual environments. And I loved the game. I'm a big fan of computer games basically, but I really loved the passiveness and the exploration and the storytelling that existed in the Myst game that I wasn't seeing in games like Doom or Hexen or you name it, or Quake. And so around 1999, I wrote an article for Gamma Sutra online blog, and I talked about the missed opportunities of the gaming industry not using some of the lessons learned by companies that were creating physical environments like theme parks. Will Harvey, who was just starting there.com, read that article and gave me a call and said, I think I'm working on the exact project that you should be working on. And I went down for an interview in early 2000. I met Matt Danzig down there. He was already working there designing the avatars for there.com. And I was hired as the art director for the environments for
Nice.
what was. We didn't even know what there was the time I was starting there. And we started doing drawings as they built the engine around us.
That is great. That's really great information.
Yeah, it was a great place to be. Both Matt and I started at a time where they were just still conceiving of what it was going to be. It was really 2 years later that we actually had something where we could start putting buildings in and start running around. So those first 2 years were spent just basically designing what would be in the environment once they gave us the tools to start building the stuff and placing it in the 3D world.
Nice. That is awesome. My next question is, as the senior art director, what was your job there to do?
Well, one of the problems I had was I was living in Eugene, Oregon. In fact, I'm still living in Eugene, and after spending 6 years living in Los Angeles, we really didn't want to move back down to the Bay Area or in a large metropolitan area. So I told Will, would it be acceptable for me to do my job from Eugene? And he said yes, which was great. So my job was to do the concept sketches for buildings and terrains, map areas, and sketch out anything that their team of 3D artists could build while I was away. So my job was to maybe fly down twice a month just to see what people were working on. The rest of the time was spent in Oregon producing the concept sketches that would be translated into the eventual buildings and landscape.
Awesome. That is awesome. My next question is, what was your favorite design that you created?
Well, when we started, we launched into designing a much more complex world than eventually ended in being in the product. I think for that first 2 years, we were pretty naive about how many polygons we were going to be able to use for a structure. And so we came up with some pretty elaborate environments that eventually had to be drastically scaled down. So some of our initial ideas, which were our favorites, ended up having to be scrapped so that we could start from scratch and come up with environments that wouldn't cause people's computers to freeze. We also had the issue that that the tools that were being designed to build there were really world-building tools as opposed to necessarily small plots of land tools. So the brushes we used to create valleys and mountains weren't really good at creating paths, and so you could easily pull the train up to create the Rockies, but it was much harder to create environments like a place to put a house and a little path that led from the street to your house. So we spent a lot of time trying to come up with a way in which to build environments that allowed for that broad brush to still work with our environments. And we also ended up coming up with a chess piece sort of mentality when it came to designing structures, so that we could build a handful of structures, and then by the way we populated those structures, create whole villages or towns without it necessarily feeling cookie cutter like.
That's cool. That's really cool. Just top of that question, your favorite design that you did in there. What were some things that you did design in there? Like, what was some neat stuff that you did in there?
Let's see. Well, I liked the thought that went into how villages worked. The idea that thematically one area might be spooky, another area might be arid, another area would be lush, and there's lots of little elements I liked. I certainly liked the ideas behind things like the bars and the changing locations. And also we went through, once we finished the Tiki Islands, we also went through a design phase where we started coming up with other thematic areas, like the darker areas, and Matt was actually responsible for the floating designs that were done.
So like Saha would be like an example?
Yes, that Saha is all Matt. That's definitely his aesthetic.
That was actually pretty interesting how everything was floating in the air, and definitely the texture designs was outstanding.
Yeah, one of our challenges was it took so long between concept to getting it in the product that something like having drinks that your avatar could hold could have been designed in December but wouldn't necessarily be in the product till April. So we were constantly having to deal with that.
Yeah, actually what's pretty funny with the drinks is that every time when you had a sip, you're drinking it from your nose and not from your mouth.
Yeah, and once you discovered that, it would take another 3 months before we could fix it.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. It didn't bother me, it was just pretty funny how it did happen. So my next question is, what was your favorite place to hang out in World?
Well, actually, some of my favorite places were obscure park benches that were tucked on mountaintops or in areas where it allowed you to sit and chat with someone and just watch the world go by. That was something that I thought was pretty unique about there, especially in the early days, that your conversations had a context. And when you was just the two of you sitting up on a bench looking at people, it allowed you the ability to have your conversation be not about that or to focus on that. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Awesome. So what places like park benches did you sit at, like that you like to hang out?
There was one that sat over the main beach, and now I can't remember the names of it. But it just had a really great view, and you could see for virtual miles, and watch people driving by or flying by.
That's nice. I remember actually one of my favorite places was it was where the UFO was floating in the air constantly, like a small UFO of a circle around the mountaintop. I forgot the name of it. I think Virtual Vicky knows what I'm talking about, but there was like this UFO, and me and my friends would like just hang out there time to time, just be like, oh, imagine that was real life, just a UFO, just coming down and circling around the planet.
Yeah, one of the things that we never were able to really get a handle on, at least when I was there, was to come up with water surrounding the virtual island. And one of the things I did before I ended up leaving was creating a giant bathtub plug, which
oh yes, could you please explain about that, because that everyone would definitely like to know about that.
Well, every time we would bring up the inclusion of water, I was assured that it would be very hard to do, and so it never happened. Well, it happened eventually, long after I left. But as my sort of commentary on that, I decided to build a big bathtub plug that pulled so that there was at least some reason why there was no water in the world, and so I tucked it. I tucked it way, way far away. It was really, really hard to get to. And I used to love to sit on the rim of that and have conversations with people. Eventually, everybody linked to it, so it was always covered with people.
Yeah. Now, what was the story about? You see, what was interesting is that later on, I guess, was it plugged when you did it, or was it unplugged?
No, I did it unplugged, and when they finally included water, somebody plugged it.
Yeah, I noticed that. It'd be kind of interesting is that during the last couple of weeks of there, it'd be kind of interesting. They actually literally unplugged it, just pretending the water's being drained out, and that would be actually kind of funny to see that. But yeah, I was actually hanging out there a lot lately. I did a lot of tours there, but like, here's the plug that somebody designed, and I forgot who designed it, but now we know that it was you that designed it.
It was like that with Clucky Island too, the one that had the statue to Clucky. That was another one of those little special hidden Easter egg things.
That's funny. Yeah, I remember I asked Matt the question about why was there a chicken in Monkey Creek area, and he explained about it, and I thought that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, that's a running joke. In fact, it's a running joke that we continue at InView. Matt was so transfixed by how funny he thought the chickens were that at every possible meeting where we talked about what we were going to add to there, he would always chime in that we had to add chickens. So every possible place we could stick a chicken, we would.
Did he add any chickens in here yet?
Oh yeah, they're all over the place. In fact,
that's great.
Yeah, there's even a shrine, a mini shrine we created as a product of Clucky.
Oh, that's funny. I definitely have to check that out later. You'll definitely have to TP me there when you get a chance. I need to check that out. That's pretty funny.
A lot of the tutorials also include textures that are centered around chickens.
Oopsie, my apologies about that. That's interesting. So my next question is, what was it like working with the staff member, like Will, Jeffrey, Matt, Rebecca, those people?
It was wonderful. We had a really great group, and there was a lot of diverse talent, a lot of people who really, really shined at what they did, and in a lot of cases they had to work with some fairly basic tools to do the work that they were doing. But it was great. It was one of my favorite times.
Awesome. Do you have any fun memories about working with the staff member?
Yeah, all the time. Since I was going down twice a week, I was always the out-of-towner guy. It usually took a day or two to warm up to me again, but it was good. We hung out a lot, and no, it was good.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. My next question is: were there any designs that you created that were never released?
Well, quite a lot. Like I said, that first 2 years was filled with designing things that we eventually discovered were impossible to build. But yeah, for a while, Matt and I worked on sort of a sinister carnival idea, this sort of gypsy wagon-filled carnival that was a cross between circus and bikers. And we spent about 2 months on that, and it just eventually ended up being just too much work and didn't fit into the schedule. So I have a lot of sketches for that, but it never happened.
Maybe you could do is that. Why don't you upload them onto your site and just show like what some stuff that you were thinking about adding into there that never got really released. I bet people would love to see that.
I have some of those up there. Also, I produced a self-published book of sketches of there, which you can
Awesome.
find. You can find it at lulu.com, or also you can download the digital version, which works on Nooks and iPads and things like that. And it's got about
Awesome.
50 concept sketches from there, including a lot of those ones that didn't end up getting built.
Awesome. I'm gonna definitely check that out later on. Now I'm not sure if you were there at the time, but do you know anything like about Egypt, like, and how it was formed?
Yeah, Egypt was one of the projects, the side projects. When we first started, the idea was that we were going to create a resort. We wanted to create a virtual place where people wanted to go hang out, and so someone said that they thought that Club Med would be neat. So for the first year or two, we focused specifically on tropical islands, and after a while, people got pretty tired of making thatched huts and beachwear, and so and the art team was really wanting to start showing off their abilities and work on projects that were not tiki themed, and Egypt was one of them. So that was one of the projects. Their time was limited, and so each project that was worked on only allowed for so many structures and so many environments. But that was an attempt to see how realistic we could go with the technology we had at the time.
Uh, so like was like how did you get like the design, like the inside design, like the hieroglyphics and everything like that? Because that's actually pretty difficult to texturize. You know what I mean? Because you got to get everything precise. Like, did it have a meaning behind it with the pictures and everything?
That was actually done by two of our artists, and they would probably know better than I. I believe there was some hidden meanings in some of the hieroglyphs. The rest of it were textures. I think mostly they were just trying to create a mood, and they were also trying to see whether or not they could create an environment that was more realistic but still worked with the more graphic design of the avatars.
Was there ever did they put a mummy in the coffin in the inside the pyramid?
They didn't while I was there. They may have later.
Okay, I don't think they did, but yeah, because I know like when you enter into Egypt, like they showed you the textures like of the hieroglyphics and everything like that. But when you get deeper in, there was like a mummification area, and I wasn't too sure if they actually put like a mummy in there.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure.
Okay, no worries. But at one point there was talking about developing a tiki lounge. Whatever happened to it?
Well, originally in the original design, each of the buildings were going to have their own theme, would only exist in one place, and only include textures that were unique to that building. During that first 2 years, one of the things we came up with was the tiki bar that was run by a guy named Lucky, and the one thing about Lucky was he wasn't. So So the tiki bar had this enormous tiki head which had fallen into it and had crushed Lucky years earlier. So you
Oh,
had this bar with this smashed tiki head through it, with light streaming through. That all ended up having to go when we started to have to use buildings in various places. So something like a tiki bar that's been crushed by a giant tiki head just wasn't going to work. Um, and we did recreate there was a lounge in Maiden Flight, and there was also that sort of the dark lava lounge. Those were sort of heading in the direction of what we wanted to do initially, but it certainly didn't involve a giant head.
that's funny. So, like as you said, like you designed Aero Lounge and Meet and Fight. Could you explain like how that came about?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, the Inferior Club. Oh, that's interesting. Um, could you explain about Meet and Flight and Aero Lounge, like how that was came about, like how you guys decided to design those two? Was there a meaning behind it?
Well, one of the sort of Disney basics is that you need to design places that allow people who are visiting them the chance to come up with their own story, so that when they arrive, they have ownership purely because they're deducing what the backstory is without you necessarily having to tell it to them. So one of the things we were doing was we wanted to create thematic environments with the tools we had that allowed people to come up with a story as to why they existed. In the case of Maiden Flight, we wanted to suggest that a plane had crashed and that the passengers, this is of course long before the television show Lost had come around. It was much more inspired by Gilligan's Island. The idea that the marquee would be the remains of this smashed plane, and that the environment would be populated by the luggage and anything else they could put together to create their village. One of
Ah,
the challenge.
go on. Did we lose him?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go.
When we were working initially on our environments and we came up with the buggies, the first thing people started doing was driving over avatars. And so the mandate came down that we needed to start elevating all of our buildings. So Maiden Flight was one of the first, but it explains why so many of our buildings are high up off the ground. It was purely because we hadn't figured out a way to keep people from running over other people. It was a sanctuary from the buggies.
That's funny. And you said there was like seats, like lounge, like a what's it called, chairs inside the airplane.
I don't think there were. I think it was just a shell.
Oh, it was. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the seats were actually used in the bar just past it.
Ah, yeah, yeah. I remember that. That was Francis hosted his last event in there, I think. I'm not sure if that was it. Am I right? Yeah. That yeah, definitely. I remember that. Let's see. Now how did what was your idea when it came to their houses? Like how was that about? Like why did you choose why did you choose a tiki house to design their houses?
Well, from the very beginning, the CEO, Tom Melcher, wanted us to create a Club Med environment. So Tiki was the obvious place to go to first. But there was also a desire to come up with different designs. We started with the Tiki and then expanded, but we still had the problem of having to create sort of cookie cutters, shoppable buildings that could be placed anywhere. And so that's why there was the designs that we had starting out anyway.
Ah, okay. Was there any houses that you designed in there besides the tiki houses?
I pretty much did the rough sketches of all the structures, and then our artists and our modelers and our texture artists would do the finished models.
Oh, I see. That's awesome. So what were your favorite memories about there?
Well, I think I loved most the concept of the place. We were all super dedicated to making this as spectacular as possible and working against some pretty steep odds. I think we were all surprised that we were let go around 2004 because we felt as though we had just started to have all the tools necessary to make it better, and then off we went.
Yeah, but you guys did definitely a great job while you guys were still there. Like, you guys definitely made there for us to enjoy it and have a great time.
Well, that was without a doubt our main motivation, was to create environments that other people would have a good time exploring and being in.
Yeah, I think the only thing we really mostly cared about, well, for me that is just to meet other people and socialize and just have fun things to do in there. You know what I mean? Like, instead of just worrying about, like, all right, so let's see, is there anything new? No, it's just the same. It's just, you know what I mean? What's really surprising is that every day when you walked into there was something new there to do and something interesting that we were able to do. Like, we were able to paintball. You know what I mean? There's tons of things to do in there that it's impossible to do in all in one day. That's how great there was.
Yeah, we always knew that what we were doing visibly or visually was secondary to the importance of creating an environment that allowed people to connect with each other. So it very much like designing the sets for a ballet or a play, you understand that people are really there for the performance, and in the case of there, people are really there for their connection with another human being more than they are there for how beautiful the trees are.
Yeah. Back.
Oh, I think I may have lost you.
Oopsie. Sorry about that. Yeah, clicked the wrong button. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened to it. What was it I was going to ask? Oh, yeah. What were fun things that you guys did in there? Like, you and the staff, what were some fun activities? Did you guys have, like, a paintball out? Any fun stuff that you guys did?
Well, there was a constant war going on over the cubicles that involved Nerf guns and rubber bands. And not only that, but there was also this oversized, human-sized fish that would appear in various places. Maddie, one of the 3D modelers, was a gymnast, and he could hide this fish just about anywhere. So you would come in and you'd find it tucked up in the ceiling someplace. And it was huge. It was like 6 foot long. So you never knew where that fish was going to show up.
That's funny. Could you explain more about the fish? Like, how, like, why there was a fish there? Like, what was there? Like, what was the reason why?
I don't think there was any big meaning. I think someone just brought it in, and it took the fancy of the art team, and we ran with it.
That's funny. So let me guess, you guys play a game like Find the Fish and you win some Blair Bucks?
Yeah, I think they finally had to be scolded for the amount of rubber bands that were flying around. There was also a whiteboard, I think you can even find it on the web, that had a constant stream of caricature drawings, some appropriate, some not so appropriate, of various members of the team.
I'll have to look for that. That's pretty funny. So what were, like, fun things that you drew in there that got developed that you had a great time with?
I think my favorite stuff was the initial coming up with land masses, trying to figure out ways to create environments that would allow people on the ground to self-navigate. When it came to the main Caldera Island, we used a clock face as the design, so that thematically, as you moved around the clock face, it would get more arid in the dunes area, it would get lusher in some of the green areas, spookier in the valleys, and a lot of that philosophy ended up being a little complex, but we were able to still create environments that you felt as though you were in a different zone, despite the fact that it was all living on the same landmass. So those initial designs were really enjoyable.
That's great. That's pretty cool. What was it? Do you know anything about Blinky, like about the whole story behind it?
No, I don't.
That might be later on. Okay, never mind then. I think that was later. Okay, no worries. We got 30 minutes left, and I've also asked a couple of members of there to send in questions for you to answer, if that's okay with you.
Oh, that's fine with me, yeah.
Awesome. One of the questions is, whoopsie, there we go. Sorry. One of the questions was from Francis Seven, Virtual Vicky, and he asked, I am most interested in the designs of the villages, especially Mirage and to the lesser extent Taboo. Tell me about the different designs of these places. Did they turn out the way you envisioned them in your art?
Yes, those are actually two of my favorite environments. When we realized that we weren't going to be able to create spaces that were necessarily unique structurally, we had to find ways in which to take smaller models, populate an area with multiples of them, and still make that cluster of buildings feel unique. In the case of Taboo, we were trying for something spooky, and in the case of something like Mirage, we were trying something arid and nomadic. And you really have to take my hat off to Rebecca Sheeran, because she did just a wonderful job of texturing those two environments to make them completely unique. And although she was pretty much using a handful of models in each case to create much more complex environments.
That's cool. And thank you, Rebecca. If you are tuning into this video, thank you so much for helping us to make their amazing. Another question is, what were some things that did you guys do with Rebecca and Matt together? Like, what did the three of you, did you guys have like one major project to work on all together?
Let's see. Matt was working on the floating city, and Rebecca was working on the spookier environment, the sort of alien environment during that period. Otherwise, Rebecca was pretty much in charge of the look and feel of everything, and she is a real perfectionist when it comes to making sure that the textures, which were very, very small by computer game standards today, were cohesive and worked together in a palette that made the environments feel like they belonged to each other.
That's awesome. Another question is, one of the members asks is that what some stuff with the tikis that you guys worked with, like besides the houses, what else did you use? Was there anything else besides the houses that you used with the tiki look?
Well, we spent probably 4 years doing tiki stuff, to the point where the CEO at one point said that he was worried that I was going to be unable to design anything but tiki, only because I'd spent so much time doing it. And everything we could possibly think of, from torches to giant heads to the graphics to how the structures were built, were all based upon sort of a very tongue-in-cheek tiki room look. And it was probably the beginning of that whole tiki bar.
Oh, we lost you.
Oops. Did you get any of my answer?
Yeah, we got some of your answer, but it cut off a little bit, but I think we got the majority of it. Yeah, you talked about the tiki bar.
The idea was to create as much pieces of furniture, elements like the tiki bar, elements like tiki heads and torches, and anything that we could populate the environment with. We were pretty much tapped out on tiki by the time the 4 years were up.
Another question is, what current projects are you currently working on here in IMVU?
Well, my job description when I started, just about 4 years ago, working with Matt. Matt left with Will to start IMVU, and they brought me in about 2 years after they had started their work. And Matt's mandate to me was to inspire the developer community by example. And while there I spent my time doing concept sketches that were handed off to 3D artists, at IMVU he said, we don't really have the budget to have 3D artists design, building your designs. You're going to have to do it yourself. So I started starting in the morning with the design, and by the afternoon having a fully built, textured, and in the catalog product. And so ever since I started, everything that I built is meant to hopefully inspire our developers to push the boundaries of what IMVU can be. So one day I might be building furniture, the next day I might be building environments. Right now I'm writing tutorials that help our developers understand the tools, but also inspire them to try various techniques with textures and animating and mesh building to constantly improve the way that their products look.
Awesome. What texture designs did you work on in here?
Luckily, I got to pretty much work on whatever I feel like it. Of late, they've been having me do VIP rooms or gifts. Every month or so, we give VIP members a free environment full of furniture, and often I'll be hired to, or given the assignment to build that. And my most recent one was I did sort of Swiss Family Robinson treehouse. In fact, it's a lot like there, but they wanted to fill it. They wanted me to fill it with steampunk furniture, so I got to do a lot of sort of steampunk brass furniture with red velvet on it for us to give as the September VIP gift.
That's nice. Did you do any 3D textures like tiki look in here?
Yeah, there's a little bit in that one. I've also done some tiki environments, but I do everything. I'll do everything from castles to vampire manors to outer space to coffee houses, whatever's necessary, and whatever my interest is at the moment. So I pretty much get to build just about anything, which is neat.
That's good to hear. That's nice to hear. Was it difficult to build the 3D textures since you were handed off the textures over to the 3D textures people?
Well, in the case of my stuff was just black and white line drawings that then they would build in 3D and Rebecca would texture. In the case of IMVU, I'll need to build the 3D mesh myself, create the textures in Photoshop, apply the textures, tech it, make sure that everything's working together, export it, and then create all the images necessary to sell it. So if I start building it, I have to do everything.
Was it a little bit did it take you a little bit long time to do it, or it was just wasn't too difficult at all?
No, 3D Max is not easy to learn, and I'd say it took about 2 years before I felt comfortable with it. I still don't love it. In fact, what was kind of an eye-opener was when working at there, I spent most of my time not understanding why our model builders weren't able to do certain things, and there are certain limits within the building of 3D objects that you learn really quickly when you're trying to build them for yourself.
Have you tried using Blender?
I've played around with it a little bit. They're very similar in their difficulty level.
Yeah, what about Gmax?
I loved Gmax when it first came out. It's hard to get a hold of now. I actually build all of my rough models in SketchUp just because it's so incredibly fast. Usually, if you take the amount of time I take to produce a 3D environment or a 3D piece of furniture, only about 8 to 10% of that time is spent building the mesh, which I usually do in SketchUp. I'll export it to Max, and then in Max is where I'll do all my texturing, teching, and exporting. We are just also working on new creator tools that will streamline some of the exporting part of that process. So the kind of steps we had to go through 4 years ago, we just don't need to do anymore, which is really, really nice.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. Are there any future designs that you like to share? Like anything new that you're working on?
Well, at the moment, I've been testing the Mac client, and especially the creator tools, which we're going to introduce very shortly, that will work completely on the Mac. The eventual hope is that anything that comes for the PC will automatically come to the Mac as well, which is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm actually on a Mac right now using what's it called, the client, and I remember a few weeks ago there wasn't voice yet, but I think voice was added probably last week or the week before, and it's really great, and it's making my life easier to run it on here than using my boot camp.
Yeah, one of the things that was a founding aspect of InView, and it really was learned from our experience there, was there needed to be no lag between developing features and getting them into the product. So the InView was designed at the beginning to be able to introduce things often, and we would have updates maybe 20 times in a day in the early days, and I probably end up downloading a new pre-release client a couple times a day as it's being developed. So it's pretty great.
Well, that's good to hear. Did it take a long time to make the Mac client, or like, you know what I mean? Was it a little bit difficult? Because I know like the platform for the Mac is a Unix, and Windows, you know what I mean? Yeah, but was it a little bit difficult to do it?
I'm not sure. The Mac team has not been working that long. I think more than anything it was that as a company we needed to be able to have the resources to focus on it, and that just came, I'd say, within the last year. And awesome. They've been doing great work, and they're very dedicated to making it a really good experience.
That's good to hear. Well, I think we are out of questions, and also we had awesome time to talk to you, Don, and I'd like to thank you for taking time and asking to answer our questions. And oh yeah, that's true. Also, yeah.
I don't know.
What was your favorite drink? Their drink.
I don't know. I can't remember the names. I loved all of them. Those were all Rebecca designs. I think probably her drink machines were one of my favorite things in the product.
I remember they have flaming banana, volcano, the beta drink as well. They had. They also had a soda pop. What else was there?
Wasn't it Java Lava? Wasn't that one of the names?
Coffee they had. I think they have a Java. I think so.
Well, I'm from the northwest, so I think probably the coffee one's my favorite.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, there was volcano. Oh, a snow drink. What was it called? What was that snow drink called? That shoots snowballs. Yeah, snowball.
That's right.
That's funny. I'm trying to think what else. Did you make the textures for the drinks?
No, that was all Rebecca. That was her work.
I'm trying to think. Was there anything else that you enjoyed that Rebecca designed?
Well, she pretty much did everything. So there's almost no surface that she didn't touch in some way. And she would stay as late as it was necessary to find just the right color balance of all the elements. Wow,
that's awesome. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think what else. Oh yeah, what else did you like to do in there? Did you guys have like buggy races with their staff?
Yeah, anytime we could jump in and start shooting at each other was always fun. And as we would build it, we would jump in during the process just to see how things were coming. We also went through a phase where we did a lot of our meetings in there where we would want to talk about the design of an area, and it was just easier just to sit at our computers, go to that environment, and have a conversation while standing there.
Yes, that's good. What was your favorite fun zone to have fun in?
Oh, I liked a lot of them. I liked Dune Valley a lot. Uh, I liked Taboo a lot, and I think probably one of the places that I would hang out the most was still on that cliff, but overlooking the valley.
Yeah, that was fun. I'm not sure if you were aware, but I remember in the ocean, far in the ocean, that you would be like, I think it was 0, 0. Oh, not 0, 0, but you'll like be like on 90 degrees, and like if you try to go over to one direction, it'll just push you back away. You'll just go the opposite way. It's like some kind of magnetic reflection. Yeah, the North Pole.
You know what? I don't remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, they had North Pole and South Pole, and whenever you try to go to the North Pole, it would just push you away. It's like a big magnet that's pushing you away. Yeah,
Well, thanks
did
for
you?
having me.
No problem. Also, did you design the textures for space? Was that your job that also you did?
No, not wasn't me.
Ah, all right. I think. Do you have any more questions, Francis, that you'd like to ask? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you again, Don, for taking time, and it was really great to do this interview with you. You've been a wonderful help, and you've done so much for there, and we all like to thank you for your hard work and your support. And without you, we wouldn't have the tiki looks and everything that you did, and we are all very appreciated.
Well, thank you so much. It was wonderful to talk to you, and it's really nice to be remembered for that work.
No problem. You did a great job. You, Matt, Rebecca, Jeffrey, Will, you guys all did a great job. You all put your soul, everything in there, and it really paid off for us members because we really enjoyed it. We all had a blast, and it was amazing.
Well, thank you both.